I have a confession. I absolutely, thoroughly, in almost every way, hate making video content. It's just fundamentally different than working in still photos. And the more the internet seems to push that video content reigns supreme, the more I've been kicking and screaming against having to create more video content. I personally use a platform like YouTube for almost nothing. I don't watch it for entertainment, I don't watch it for education, except as a method of explaining a complex visual idea, which is often the case when I'm trying to deconstruct the how I made a photo, because I can pull in not just the still photo, but also my voiceover commentary, perhaps behind the scenes footage, and combine all kinds of different media content in one video. Yes, it makes sense that for many ideas, using video is the best medium to get the point across. It's just personally my least favorite, my absolute last resort. Even making a video like this, I've been procrastinating for like a couple months about finally getting around to. So a couple months ago, Facebook finally opened up a bonus program to pay people on their platform to make reels. Actual cash paid to you directly to your bank account for making Instagram Reels, which are almost 100% video content, or as close as it might get to still photos is like slideshow kind of content. So once I opted in to the bonus program, I hit the accelerator pedal on a couple of different ideas for Reels, one of which I call this Walk With Me series that has a really quick cut together of behind the scenes footage, giving a wider context, maybe one small little nugget of information, and then the final photo that was made, all in about 25 seconds. So since ramping up the volume of reels that I've been making across 3 different countries and maybe 6 different cities and tons of different varieties of the conditions I was working in, with workshops and conferences, wedding days and engagement sessions, it's been a really nice mix. But what has really surprised me isn't just the obvious uptick in new followers and traffic feeding to my main profile page and all the links that link out from there. That is absolutely undeniably happening. What surprised me the most was just I was getting DMs and outright public comments asking exactly what camera I was using to make these reels. So here it is. So it's a pretty famous social media camera. It's the Insta360 ONE X2, which is a ridiculous long, complex name, but this is the camera I've been using and having the absolute best results with. I've gone through a huge variety of GoPro style, swappable, modular camera. I've got like 3 or 4 other ones laying around here. I bought them all and tried them all and landed on one for a good while that I was pretty happy with, another one by Insta360 called the Go 2, but was just a little too constrained with things like battery life and the fact that I still needed to mount this to my camera. Once I switched my primary workhorse camera body to being the Canon R3, I realized I can't really shoot with something in the hot shoe mounted to the body at all times because it's a gripped body and it's already pretty large. So I started to look at other cameras. I actually owned 2 of these. I bought an extra one by mistake. When I first bought this camera, it really was all about just seeing how you could play with a 360-degree field of view and how neat that is, and that was about it. I had no real use or need for this camera. This seemed way too large to mount to my camera body. But then I remembered that I shoot with a sling bag. I always have. I've tried every camera strap system and combo that you could possibly imagine, but because I mostly shoot with one single camera body during a wedding day, I really like having a couple of extra lenses to swap in and out of. I don't really need a second body all the time if I've got that. This is my favorite sling bag of choice. It's made by Incase. I'm really not sure what the name of this model is anymore. It looks like this. Figure it out on your own. Do a Google search. I don't work for them and I don't have affiliate links for them. But the main thing I always loved about this sling bag was the thick, chunky strap. It's just super soft, super wide, and it's got this really, really nice chunky grip and a detachable strap, so it makes it super easy to pack into another bag. So what I realized, using this sling bag, I could easily just hit record, slide this camera and this nice chunky strap, and be on my way without having to do anything. Great, right? Well, not quite. And I'll probably cut in footage right about now that shows you, though this is a 360 camera, when you put it up against yourself or the camera strap or anything else, you definitely lose all of one perspective. Totally fine, I'm not too worried about that. What I'm really interested in is capturing everything in front of me in a circular shape so that I can edit the footage down in post, either 16:9 or 9:16, depending on where I'm going to use it. But unfortunately, this exact position on the strap didn't quite have the angle that I needed. You can see it's getting a little bit too much of my double chin action here, and it's just overall too close to something else, meaning my head, to really be the perfect position for it. It's a real shame. You could, I suppose, mount it upside down like this and probably have better results. It does kind of wiggle and it may slowly work its way out and drop. That would not shock me at all. It's not a very tight fit, but what I ended up opting for was just a simple black rubber band. Just loop through itself and then around the camera. The camera screen turns off after you start recording. Because it's black and this camera bag is black and everything sort of blends in, I also generally shoot with a black shirt on. This camera is really low profile. It's the biggest one of these sort of GoPro style cameras that I shoot with, but it absolutely doesn't invite questions from anybody that I'm photographing. They might notice it or something, but it doesn't feel super obtrusive. And I've also been very sensitive to making my clients feel like I'm just strip mining them for content. I don't want them to think I've got 17 cameras going at all times. I may or may not use any footage that I capture. And that's where another key aspect of this camera really came into play, which is battery life. This camera will do 5K recording up to about an hour and a half, or if you use a third-party battery like I do with a slightly larger capacity, it'll actually record up to an hour and 40, hour and 45 minutes continuously without you having to do anything at all. When I'm actively working to make still images with my clients, especially on something as time sensitive as a wedding day, where I want to be at maximum efficiency and just not distracted on anything other than the work. After many, many months, this camera has absolutely proven itself to simply get out of the way. Because it captures everything in front of you as a complete circle, it actually has a built-in gyro that it overlaps with the footage that's captured to have a completely level horizon no matter my orientation at all, unless the camera is totally flipped around and I'm grabbing lenses out of it. As long as it's facing forward, when I get back from shooting and I sit down at my computer, I can have perfectly level horizons with super silky smooth footage. And then it also has an array of microphones that do wind and noise reduction and really, really clean, voiceover sort of commentary style audio. So other than the overall size and what I would always love, which is more battery life, this has proven to be my absolute favorite camera to capture behind the scenes footage without needing the assistance of anybody else and without interrupting my creative process or making my clients feel uncomfortable without having an obvious continuously recorded video camera pointed at them the entirety of a session. So there is one other catch related to the footage in this camera. Because it captures everything in this spherical 360 orientation, it doesn't save those files in any standardized format like MP4 or MOV. It has its own standard, and we can take a look together. It's called a .insv file. You might notice with everything you capture, there's actually a duplicate file that's made. You can see here I've got 3 of a fairly large 30 to 40 gigabyte file size and then 3 much smaller. These smaller ones are like the preview lightweight data that you're actually seeing when you review the footage on your camera and stuff like that if you want. I don't really ever use that, but I will click and drag all of these at one time into the Insta360 Studio app. This is where you isolate and interpret the raw footage, however it's going to be in its final form. So you can see I've got these 3 different clips, all about an hour of shooting with 3 sessions I recently did in Scotland. I'm not gonna walk through exactly how I use this other than to show you. In post, I can pan and scan around. Obviously, if I turn all the way around, there is footage captured of everything between the camera and my chest, which is essentially just black darkness. But everything else that I captured, I can pan and scan around and keyframe mark exactly what perspective I want to use in the footage, depending on where it's going to end up. So here's a 16:9 interpretation, and here's a 9:16. And because, again, this is circular footage, I'm not losing any resolution at all by changing my aspect ratio in post. So they've got a great feature called flow state stabilization, another one called direction lock, which is whatever direction you start on, it'll try and stay there. Both of those I keep on almost all the time. And then I just go through and keyframe whatever chunks of the footage I ultimately want to export. And from here is where I get an MP4 file to then edit exactly like you would normal video. So if you've literally never done video before, this might seem like a lot, but I am gonna work on a follow-up post that has a step-by-step process of exactly how I go through making all of my Instagram reels. And I can make them very, very fast. At this point, it doesn't feel like work. It's actually a little bit fun. And I've realized another benefit of working with reels specifically in video content. They might seem like I'm targeting other photographers with these little nuggets of information and ideas and sensitivities related to my craft and my process of image making, but I've actually noticed that most clients, they bring up the fact that they've seen my reels and really appreciate having a wider context and more behind the scenes insight into what the scene actually was and then what I got out of it. So reels serve two purposes. It's helping out my fellow photographers by giving insights about little problems I'm solving and just a wider scene of what's going on. And it's serving as a really powerful marketing tool for clients that really value the craft of photography and just somebody who is going to push the creative edge of what they're doing during someone's actual wedding day. So that's enough of a reason for me to keep working in the direction of video content. I still personally really hate the idea of being a videographer. I am a still photographer, and that will always take my priority. But the better technology gets, not only the convergence of still imagery and moving pictures in the camera bodies we shoot with, but little lightweight, more affordable cameras that you can just kind of pepper everywhere as you're shooting and capture stuff without having to think about it. The more the friction of making things like video content after the fact, if I want to, the easier that gets. So I hope that answers the question. Every other comment and DM that I get from now on, I will send directly to this really over-explanation, long-winded video to simply tell you I use the Insta360 One X2 camera to capture my behind-the-scenes footage. So people on my Patreon, look out for a step-by-step tutorial of the editing app that I use and the entire process of how I end up making my reels really quickly. And for everybody else, I hope you got something out of this video. As always, I appreciate your attention, and I'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.